Hello and welcome back to The Recharge. I'm Ruben Gonzalez, and as you can see, that's Michael Peterson from Bolts from the Blue. Welcome, Michael, to the show today. He's sitting in for Matthew Stanley, who's taking a break from Chargers-related things at this moment. But Michael's here to fill in for his place, and we're going to talk Chargers. We've been on a bye for a couple weeks already, and so
feels like a couple weeks.
Yeah, we also need to recharge, and so. Hey, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ruben. I'm glad you called. I'm always happy to hop on and talk to you guys. It's always a wonderful time when we get together.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have hit pretty much the midway point of the season, and so we thought that it would be a good idea to shell out some mid-season awards. And so we'll start off with the first one, the most important one, MVP of the year. Michael, who do you got? Who do you got for MVP for the Chargers?
I think there's only one option when it comes to MVP this year, and that's Old Man Rivers. And I mean, you can't argue with the numbers, especially when you compare them to last year's numbers and the year before that. I mean, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and obviously you can make the argument that his third interception just should not have happened. Obviously, it was the slant route to Gordon at the end of the Browns game. Really, he should be sitting at 17-2, just one more interception than Drew Brees, who threw his first this past week against the Minnesota Vikings. He is one of the 5 elite quarterbacks, according to Pro Football Focus, if you guys subscribe to those numbers, and as always, take them with a grain of salt. But I think Philip Rivers has deserved this 90.2 rating, which does put him in that elite category. He's playing the best ball of his career. Possibly, I mean, arguably, if you really think about it, going back to 2006 when the team went 14-2, that was a time they also started 5-2. I mean, there's every other year. The records ended up pretty good when Philip Rivers has played this kind of football, and it's really tough to argue. Obviously, Gordon has scored, all the touchdowns. I think he's up to 9, even though he's missed a game. He's also, I think, 7th in the NFL, still after missing one game in terms of total scrimmage yards. And you can make a case for Gordon, but I just don't think this team, especially games like the Titans and some of the closer ones, the team would have pulled out if Philip Rivers wasn't playing the type of football that he is now.
Absolutely. I'll go with Rivers, too, for pretty much everything that you've said. Kind of interesting that after all these years, he's having his best season. You kind of think, oh, he's heading out of the bye. People wanted Mariota a few years ago. And here we go, year 15, and he's having the best year of his career. Offensive MVP for you?
I guess instead of having to double up on Philip Rivers, we can go ahead and, just slot Melvin Gordon right on in there. Because if you think about it, Philip Rivers is playing out of his mind. He's not so much carrying the team, because if you did take Gordon's productivity, efficiency out of the equation, you kind of saw a little bit of that against the Titans. Obviously, Gordon didn't play. We were hoping, a big game from Eckler, and the game kind of just... I wouldn't want to say it's a bad game, but it was just kind of a weird fizzle out in terms of the excitement that we had leading into it. Gordon's been great. He has been finishing his runs. He's been taking advantage of the opportunities, even more so than he has in the past. A lot of people say, oh, Gordon's just a good fantasy back. He scores a lot of touchdowns, low yards per carry, but look at his stats now. He has a career average of, I think, 3.8. Which obviously isn't good right now, and he's got plenty of time to raise it. But he's been playing so well. I think he's averaging over 5, if I'm not mistaken, 5.3, somewhere between 5.3, 5.7, something along those lines. He's been absolutely incredible. 2 of his career 7 games over 100 yards rushing have come this season, and we've still got half the season left. So I think finally Gordon has taken that step in terms of being the maybe in that top tier running back conversation. Finally, after 3 years of he could be, but he just hasn't done it yet. He's actually on his way, and I think there's a really good case for that.
I have no problems picking Gordon. In fact, that's who we have, and I think as you see the rest of these awards, we're going to have the same people. But I have no problem with Gordon being the choice here because. And I'm actually happy that we get to root for him because for so long, his whole career, we've kind of dogged him. And I'll be the first one to admit it. I wasn't a believer in him, but it actually feels good to kind of give him some props because, hey, what's good for for Gordon is good for the Chargers, and what's good for my well-being as well. So let's move on to the defensive player of the year. And this one was a little bit more trickier, right? There's a couple of people in the mix on this one.
Yeah, no, most definitely. But I my first thought was, of course it's Derwin James. Derwin James has been fantastic. Although you can argue the last 2 games he wasn't the Superman self that he was the first couple of games of the season. But then I start thinking about, who else was playing up to the standards of James? Who else has been making the impact? Who else has been exciting the crowd and the team with his splash plays as much as Derwin James? And I think even with the 2 down games, contextually, the last 2 weeks, the argument is still James. Last time I checked, he still has 3.5 sacks on the year. What's funny enough is I didn't even know that he set this record or he tied it. But last year, Desmond King set the rookie defensive back record with 4 sacks last year. And this year, through 8 games, Derwin James has 3.5. And I mean, he did, 3 of those through the first 5 games. He's been on an absolute tear. If you look at his coverage grades and how well he's doing in coverage, he's not top tier, but for a rookie safety to be considered, one of the top 20 defenders in the league in terms of pass coverage, that's phenomenal. What he does in the box is also phenomenal. They to make up, obviously, for Bosa having been out, Derwin James was called upon to use his prowess, and he's rushed the quarterback. I don't have a specific number on that, but last time I checked, with defensive backs.
Not enough.
Not enough. No,
Not enough.
No, you're right. But I think what I came across was out of defensive backs with at least 25 rushes of the quarterback, Derwin James is actually far and away, so a distant first in terms of quarterback pressures. And that's obviously phenomenal. Pressures, they're like what-if sacks, but there is a good correlation with pressures to chances to win games and lose games and stuff like that. So he's been all over the field. He does a little bit of everything, and hopefully with the bye week and coming into a team like the Seattle Seahawks who can do so many things, Gus Bradley hopefully is able to put James in a position to really wreak some havoc and kind of regain that early season form.
Yeah, in this game, we'll talk about the Seahawks in a few minutes, but if you for Gus Bradley, of course, it's kind of his homecoming game, so to speak. But I'm going to go ahead and say for Defensive Player of the Year as well, it's Derwin James. And I'm also going to go ahead and lump him in there with the Rookie of the Year so far on this team. Derwin James, it's everything that you said. He's ranked above amongst the top leaders in the NFL at his position, and he is making an impact like no one else of this year so far. So that's going to be easy. So we're in unison with Rivers, Gordon, and Derwin James, and I'm assuming you're going to say Rookie of the Year for Derwin as well, right?
Oh yes, very much so.
All right. So let's move on to the next item on the rundown. It's the Overachiever of the Year award. So somebody who's playing above his expected potential on this team. Who you got?
So my pick was Darius Philon. Darius has done a phenomenal job of picking up the pace with the absence of Bosa. And I know Gus Bradley's he's moving a lot of people around because the starting, big end, quote unquote, start the year was Isaac Rochelle. And lately it's been Damian Square. And actually things kind of took a turn for the best after Damian Square came in and replaced Rochelle. And he's been doing some crazier stuff. So Philon will work, almost every position of that defensive line. Gus Bradley moves them around, and especially out at that big end position, he could take advantage of, weaker, even slower. I mean, Darius Philon's actually a really, really quick guy off the line. He's taken advantage of his increased reps, especially when Corey Liuget was still suspended. And last time I checked, he's averaging almost a sack a game, at least through this 4-game win streak. He's been phenomenal. He keeps coming up. I know Jamie Hoyle, our fellow Jamie Hoyle, is a big fan of Darius Philon. And, for his first couple years, I just thought Darius Philon was like a weird tweener that I wasn't, really into. I didn't think he fit the defense. Same thing with like Tenny Palapoy when he was here. He's like a defensive tackle playing defensive end. I don't know. I didn't like their fit. But especially at the end of last year and this year, Philon has really, in my eyes, overachieved in terms of my expectations for him. I knew he'd be a solid player this year, but the impact he's had, again, through the first half of the season has been, yes, achieved over my expectations.
I'm going to go with Adrian Phillips on this one. He's listed as a safety, but they have him playing some linebacker position. And he's filled in well for Jatavis and Kaiser. And you talked about it before we came on air right here. Whatever happened to Kaiser? We've kind of lost mention of him, and he's filled in quite nicely for the Chargers. So Adrian Phillips gets my Overachiever of the Year. And it's not that I didn't have him graded so high. It's just he's just exceeding my expectations. So here we are to our final award of the midpoint, the Thank God You're Here award. Who you got that you're thankful that he's here on the team this year?
Well, honestly, who else could it be but Mike Pouncey? And I say that because if you guys follow me on Twitter whatsoever, besides doing stuff for the Chargers, I'm a big NFL draft guy, and specifically my niche is offensive linemen. I love offensive linemen. I think they're kind of a lost treasure, a lost art in terms of, people don't want to scout these guys. They think they're boring. Everyone wants to talk about the cool receivers, the explosive running backs, and the quarterbacks that, could vary, arm strength, all that stuff, like the cool thing, but I've never been the cool kid. I was not the cool kid growing up. And I fell in love with, the hog mollies and the people that some coaches deem the greatest people in football. Love Mike Pouncey. I was ecstatic to hear that the Chargers signed him prior to the season in free agency. I was so excited because for the longest time, and the struggles of the offensive line with this team have been well recorded over the last couple of years. It's been a carousel, especially I think it was 2015 where the team had 6 different centers, something like that. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. It was just a turnstile at that position. So when the team signed Mike Pouncey, I knew we were getting a veteran. And although he had some injury history, I thought a fresh start would be good for him. And he's been completely healthy through the first 8 games of the season. He has been the best offensive lineman to me through the first 8 games of the season. And according to PFF, he hasn't allowed a single sack at all this year. I think he's only allowed 4 pressures. That might be even less than 4. But he's been phenomenal. And I went back to look at some film to make sure my overall positivity of Pouncey was correct. And yeah, I mean, especially when you go back to a game like the Browns game. And obviously the Browns game was the best game for Melvin Gordon, I think, this year in terms of rushing the ball. And Pouncey, and a lot of guys said it while we were watching the game. Some of our fellow staff writers said that if you look back and check out some of the bigger runs, the more explosive runs that Gordon popped off, you'd find Pouncey 5, 10, however many yards down the field, making a block, working to the second level. And he's that athletic to be able to do that. And I feel like the Chargers have lacked really good athleticism, elite athleticism for some of these interior lineman positions. And obviously we want tackles to be super, super athletic to be able to handle the speed rushers, the elite rushers like the Von Millers and Khalil Macks of the world. But what really, I believe, what takes teams' run games to the next level is being able to combine the pure mass and strength to move people against their will, but be able to move yourself well enough to get in front of these speedy linebackers that some people are employing nowadays. And what caught my eye with Pouncey was I watched his film from 2017 when the Chargers played the Dolphins. I know we ended up losing that game in horrific fashion, but Jatavis Brown, if you guys didn't know, is a linebacker who runs a 4.4. I mean, an actual 4.4 under in the NFL draft, the combine he went to. Pouncey ate at his lunch. It was incredible how Pouncey effortlessly moved to the second level and erased Jatavis. And this was, during Jatavis's sophomore season that everyone was hoping for that would pop off, but Pouncey didn't let that thing take off, and it actually never did. So long story short, Pouncey has been a godsend for this team, and I think he has been the X factor in terms of keeping Philip safe and helping Melvin Gordon become the running back that we all have been hoping that he becomes sooner than later.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine this team without Pouncey.
Yeah, it's
crazy. I don't want to imagine that. I'm going to go with somebody dear to your heart. I'm going to go with Desmond King. I'm glad he's on this team because he's been in a prime position to make plays. He's stepped up. He's made plays, and he seems like he's always there around the ball. And he plays his position so perfectly. I know he probably want to be a starter, but that slot position for him is he's king there. He's the king of the NFL for that. So there you go, Desmond King. So now we look forward to this week's matchup with the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle's coming on as a team on a hot streak as well. They've got a lot of momentum. This game is being billed as a perhaps Super Bowl preview because people are expecting Seattle to make a late season rush. I've heard that a few times. So don't look at me crazy.
Okay, no, I'm not blaming you. If you're not the one making it up.
I'm not the one saying it. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. So, they've got a pretty good team. The Chargers have to go up there and play. Always a hard place to play. So maybe that's why some people are thinking Seattle has a little edge as of now. It's also kind of a prove it game for the Chargers. This is one of those teams where, okay, this is a pretty solid team. Can they beat this one? And so that will be perhaps a storyline coming out of this one. If they can pull this one off, and people will take more notice of them. First off, as we look forward to this game, we already know that Joey Bosa is not going to be playing for at least this game and maybe perhaps the foreseeable future, few games perhaps. No Bosa, no problem, or is that the attitude we should have, or should we start crossing our fingers? We do have an easy couple games coming in here, but is it going to be a problem with no Bosa for the next few games?
I think in the grand scheme of things over, the next couple games, if, worst case scenario, he misses the next couple games, I think it's no problem. Obviously, the Chargers started off with a non-existent pass rush the first couple of games, and they addressed it. Many articles were written about it, like, where's the pass rush? Where's the pass rush? Gus Bradley, come on, you're supposed to be a wizard with some of this stuff. Where is it? And Gus Bradley, I think, took that personally and decided to do something about it. So the change from Rochelle being the big end to Damian Square, like I talked about earlier, and it's been a plethora of different formations, packages, personnel. It's been absolutely crazy, and he's been working his tail off to fill that void without Bosa. In terms of these next couple games, do I think Bosa's absence will play a factor? I think a little bit more so just in this game, specifically having to deal with a quarterback like Russell Wilson. Obviously one of the best scramblers and one of the most, in general, mobile quarterbacks in the NFL today. Bosa's a smart guy on top of the physical intangibles that he possesses. The offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks is not that good. They're getting a little bit better as the season goes on, but it's not a stretch to say that they're one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And with a bad offensive line comes a quarterback freaking out. And the thing about Russell Wilson is he doesn't freak out. If he gets rushed, if the pocket collapses, he can do things. Things that other quarterbacks can't. And the Chargers don't have the most uber athletic defensive front. Melvin Ingram is the athlete that he is, but there's only one Melvin Ingram among that front four. And if Russell Wilson, gets used to running around and can toy with the defensive line and influence them and do all kinds of stuff, play point guard back there with the defense, I think we might be in for a long night. The Chargers might be in for quite the time with Russell Wilson. So we'll see. In general, no. Well, let's let them get past the Seahawks. If they can handle Russell Wilson, I think that would only spell really good things for the defensive front going forward without Bosa. And when he gets back, man, we're going to celebrate. We are going to celebrate. I'm finally going to whip out the color rush jersey I have of his, and I'm going to wear it to work. I don't know, man, but I'm going to be super pumped to see Bosa back on the field. But until then, not as big of a problem as I think most might.
Yeah, I'm still holding my breath. I'm like, okay, I'm with Lynn on this one. He's not going to play until he's 100%, and that's the way it should be. If he's not 100% yet, we don't need him on the field. We don't need that aggravating that foot injury any worse. So I'm okay with him taking it slow. I just hope he's able to play this year. That's my only thing. So back to the Seahawks, and we talked about Russell Wilson a little bit there. Where does he rank in the echelon of quarterbacks? I have him as a top 5 quarterback. He's got an arm. He's really accurate. He has some movement. He's kind of the epitome of the new age mobile quarterback, and he doesn't get as much credit for it as he should. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, so he's kind of like an enigma. People not sure on him yet. What's up?
Yeah, and again we talked about it a little bit before we got on. I think this is actually the same Seattle team as it was last year. I don't think it's a very good personnel group around him. I don't think he has a ton of playmakers like he has before. Obviously, their defense isn't the same thing. The Legion of Boom is long gone. But the thing about Russell Wilson, especially last season, it showed what kind of player his ceiling is. And I think, I really mean that when I say ceiling, because at some point late in the season last year, he accounted for over 94% of the team's touchdowns, so rushing and passing. It was all Russell Wilson. I mean, he was Superman in his purest form for this team and Pete Carroll. This year, the team did not get that much better around him. If anything, it might have got a little worse. And obviously, Russell Wilson is having a little bit of negative regression. He's making, the plays that Russell Wilson can make, but nowhere near the type of putting the team on his back and carrying them through the season as he did in 2017. In general, in terms of top 10, I think he is in that 6 to 10 range. I think without a team around him and those splash plays, exciting plays that he would make over and over again last year, if he was still doing that, yes, I think he's be a shoo-in for the top 5, just in terms of the difference maker that he is and his skill set that he can bring to the quarterback position. That's what puts you into the top 5, not just being a good quarterback, but what is special about you, the special plays that, make people go, oh my God, I can't believe he did it. That kind of stuff. So the reason why Patrick Mahomes is probably shooting up people's quarterback boards is because he's not just playing the quarterback position well in fundamentally, systematically, what we normally consider someone being a good quarterback. He's taking the quarterback position and turning it on its head, and he's been absolutely amazing. I mean, the street ball play that Patrick Mahomes is bringing to the quarterback position, Russell Wilson was kind of the first person to do those things, especially being able to use his legs and stuff like that. So again, this year, right now, I would say Russell Wilson is in that 6 to 10 range, but at his best, definitely is knocking on the top 5.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good to me. I agree. Matchup to watch this game. Who do you got?
So I think the matchup to watch this game is going to be Melvin Gordon. Obviously, all eyes are going to be on him after he missed the Titans game prior to the bye week. How is he going to match up against Bobby Wagner? And we all know Bobby Wagner is one of, if not the best middle linebacker in the game. The guy can cover, stop the run. He can make those momentum swinging plays, whenever his team needs it. And what Gordon has been so far, he's been exceeding our expectations in terms of rushing, but he's not just a rusher anymore. He is one of those new age running backs where it's not 25 carries a game. It's maybe 15 to 20 carries and 5 to 6 catches. I mean, he does it all. And it's amazing to see him progress, especially in the receiving game the last couple of years. So Gordon, if he's going to do what he does best in terms of helping this team win, running and catching, I would be surprised if Bobby Wagner wasn't assigned to him almost the entire game. A lot of Gordon's passes are checkdowns, flat routes, and stuff like that. And I think one of the easiest ways for the Seahawks to let the Chargers beat them is to allow Gordon to do what he does best. I can definitely see this game being a bad Gordon game, let's just say in terms of maybe fantasy. But I think the Chargers this isn't going to be a game won directly through Melvin Gordon, sort of like the Browns game was. It's going to be on Phillip Rivers' arm against a Legion of Boom barely hanging on. I think there is no one left, actually, after Earl Thomas injured. There is no one left, right? No Richard Sherman, no Earl Thomas, no Cam Chancellor, all that. So it is a totally different beast back there. One that's kind of found its stride the last couple weeks in terms of the passing defense. But I still think it's something that can be taken advantage of. So again, my matchup to watch is Gordon versus Bobby Wagner, and I think it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the same one, but as a since we got both of them the same one, I'm going to go ahead and just throw Fluker out there. I just don't want Fluker to do any of those body slams to some Charger players. So I'm going to be watching on him, making sure that he doesn't get under anybody's shoulder pads and does that quick lift. So no Fluker. So whoever's going up against him, I don't want to see anything close to that done to the Chargers this week. So as we conclude this rundown, Chargers coming off a bye. They had a game in London, had a nice little run around the globe, I guess you could say. Any chance for a bye week letdown, Michael? This is some say it happens. And are we going to expect the Chargers to not fall into that hole?
I would really hope not. I think the bye week in and of itself was a bit of a letdown. At first, with the news of Joey Bosa, from an anonymous source, I think Adam Schefter reported this, saying that Bosa is, quote, nowhere near ready to play. Obviously, Bosa came back and offered a good handful of minutes to reporters to really open up about his injury and his timetable to return. And although he didn't specifically say this date, he made it sound like it would be sooner rather than later, especially in what he thought originally. The confidence in the rehab is finally paying off for him. He really had to, and if you read the article, it's almost word for word. You really had to run or walk before you can run, which is what he did. He talked about you literally walking on his toes, his heels, and doing all that. And now he's running in a straight line, and he's finally in cleats and all that stuff. And that's awesome to hear. Like we talked about earlier, the Chargers have been doing a good job without him, and I think they can rest easy for maybe another week or so before Bosa comes back. The bye week also, nothing really came about from Kaiser White. We mentioned it earlier. Kaiser White is a guy who really started the year off strong. He won the weak side linebacker position, the starting job there coming out of camp, and he was drafted to be a big safety converted to a linebacker. I mean, he came out of college, I believe, 6'2", maybe 6'3", 215, 220 pounds, put on some weight throughout the training camp. I think he got upwards of 225, 230, and played very, very well. Honestly, for a while, I forgot Kaiser White was even on the team. All of a sudden, it became Jatavis White again, and it became Nick Zubnar and a lot of Adrian Phillips, like you talked about, who's been playing very well. So he was in that position, that weak, that strong safety, big safety sort of role, like Dalen Buchanan from the Arizona Cardinals started to make popular. So we didn't learn anything about Kaiser, and then we find out actually today that he's limited and probably not going to play. Actually, he wasn't limited. He didn't participate whatsoever and not going to play this year. So during the bye week, you could say that was a letdown. In terms of coming out and dropping a game against the Seahawks due to a bye week letdown, man, that would be awful. But I actually didn't think too much of it until you brought it up. So in my eyes, I don't see it happening. I think the team hopefully still riding the high from the game against the Titans, man. I mean, knowing how close that was, and I would have said if they won that game by more, I think maybe there'd be a higher potential for a letdown. I think they got, the shit scared out of them at the end of that game, realizing just how close they were to dropping a game that they probably thought was, maybe not a sure thing win, but like a pretty easy win after they were shut up by the Ravens. I mean, they had to be thinking that game was not going to be, slept walk through, but pretty easy. Because it became so close, I think they go into this game knowing that they can't attack a game maybe the way they did in London, and really got to put their foot down here and make sure they get the win instead of keeping it so close and scaring the fan base and all that good stuff. So, no, I do not believe there's going to be a letdown. Hopefully not.
Great observation on that one. I hadn't thought about that, about how close that end of the game was. Probably scared them shitless, like you said. So good job on that one. I'm totally not thinking there's going to be a bye week letdown now just because you said that. Okay, so here we are, final thing on the rundown. Score prediction. What do you got? What's the final score you got for this week?
So I'm going to use the same one that I used on the show I just recently did with KP on Rest of the West, and I have it 31-27. And like I said, I believe the team will try to make this a for sure win. The Seahawks are still, coached by Pete Carroll. They're still a talented team. Russell Wilson is still a wizard. I can't help but see this game being one that maybe the Chargers start off with a decent lead. Maybe, at some point it's 10-0, Chargers looking like they have all the momentum. And then it's 10-7, and it becomes 17-7, maybe even 27. But by, I think there's going to be a late flurry by Russell Wilson. I think he's going to just be like, I guess I got to win this game by myself. And he's going to make a handful of plays that are going to have us, the Charger fan base, and everyone watching go, wow, or I'm going to throw my head through a door.
Yeah.
Like those kind of plays. I see it being another game that's too close for comfort, because really, when I try to put it on the flip side of, can I imagine this game being, a comfortable win, not a blowout. I think that'd be crazy, but a comfortable win. I can't see it. I think we're going to be on the edge of our seats for this one. Might be a little bit of a shootout. But yeah, 31-27. I think the Chargers win. I think it's just going to be too close for comfort.
I've got 27-24 Chargers. I'm kind of like, what I don't want is I don't want Russell Wilson with the ball in his hand the last drive of the game. So the Chargers definitely need to keep momentum of this game. Got to get on the lead early. Um, so that's my thinking. I just don't want to see Russell with the ball in his hands with a minute 30 left to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to scare me. If you don't believe me, watch me on Twitter. If that happens, I'm going to be saying a lot of bad stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be losing my hair. I still have some to lose. So, um, let's hope that doesn't happen. But it's gonna be a close game. So, 27-24. You got 31-27. It looks like it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be a good game to watch. A lot of points, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I hope so. I mean, there's nothing like points, even if it's I'd like to be a comfortable lead and scoring a lot of points. Both teams, but man, it'll be fun regardless. I think it's going to be great to be back against a good team, regardless of what their overall record is this year. It is going to be a good game between two good coaches, good teams, all that good stuff.
All right, and it was good to have you here on the recharge this week. Hope you got recharged, Michael, and got our viewers recharged as well. A lot of good stuff this week. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.
All right. Also, put a plug in for your podcast.
All right, guys. So if you guys want to, do not follow me on Twitter. I am at ZoneTracks, ZoneTracks. I'm trying to get back into the two shows that I was doing with Matthew Stanley, who obviously co-hosted this show with Ruben. They are Rest of the West, and that comes out every Wednesday, or at least attempting to. Please, stay with us. That is a show about keeping fans up to date with what's going on around the rest of the AFC West, talking about how the Broncos look, Chiefs look, and Raiders look. The second show is Almost Game Day, and that is just a weekly roundup of news and a short preview, because a lot of these podcasts do the previews like we did today. But that one does weekly news. We talk about the final injury report that just came out. We do a little bit of a fantasy forecast. I'm a big fantasy person. I'm in like 7-8 leagues right now for a lot of money. I'm crazy, I know, but love fantasy. So I talk about a little bit of my advice, specifically about Charger players, about how the matchup looks against the Seahawks or whomever we be playing. And then we actually end with a prospect of the week. I do a lot of NFL draft stuff outside of Bolts from the Blue, and we'll talk about specifically the positions of need that we believe the Chargers will look forward to in the 2019 NFL draft. So, offensive tackle, defensive tackle, stuff like that. And so we'll do that to end every podcast. So if you guys, that sounds interesting whatsoever, please stay tuned. We got to get that thing up and running. Stanley did everything for me, and I just spoke. So bear with us if you guys like the recharge. Yeah. So if you guys like the recharge, and you enjoyed having me here today, please give those things a follow. Look out for them, and again, follow me on Twitter if you'd like.
All right, Michael Peterson, guys. Thank you for Michael for coming on, and we hope you guys got your recharge this week. We'll see you guys next week, hopefully after another victory. Bye-bye. All right, we're back here for bonus edition fan question. And the fan question we had this week was, what is your optimal defensive lineup for the Chargers? And so we'll go ahead and throw up the graphic there. And me and Michael have pretty much the same lineup there. Across the line, we've got Bosa, Mebane, Phelan, and Ingram. Is that correct?
Yeah, Bosa, Phelan, Mebane, and Ingram.
Yeah, and so we're assuming this is a healthy team, so that's why we got Bosa in there. And so, man, we miss Bosa a lot, don't we?
Yes, we do. I miss him being mic'd up and talking to everybody about random Netflix shows.
Well,
I miss that a lot.
Yeah, and before we go any further, we are assuming also our optimal lineup is a nickel package. And so with the nickel, that means we've got 3 defensive backs on the field, and go ahead and tell them who they are. Of course, it's obvious.
Well, I don't want to quickly correct you, but that means 3 cornerbacks at least.
Yes.
We have 5 defensive backs in general. So I've got Hayward and Williams obviously starting at your outside corners. King is a starter regardless if he's just your slot corner. On this team, he is looked at as a starter in the slot. Derwin James, obviously roaming around in the box line of scrimmage. And unfortunately, Jaleel died just on the back end because he has nothing better to do and no one else to really play that role. So that's what I got.
We'll go with that. And then linebackers, of course, we've got Denzel and Kaiser, right?
Yeah, we've got Denzel and Kaiser White. And in the nickel, just so you guys know, because of this alignment, especially the personnel, and as versatile as guys like White are and Derwin James, this can still look like a base defense almost with if like messing with King and Derwin James, they can do all kinds of stuff, especially bringing James into the box to give a 4-3 look. Even though we've got the personnel to then, protect the pass as well as a 4-3 would help stop the run. So there's tons of things that they can do with this. And again, we went with a nickel because I think it's more than 80% of the time the Chargers are in a nickel or dime defense. The base defense is usually like the depth chart and the two deeps are set up in a base look. That's why like Emmanuel is always listed as a starter, and then Nwosu was listed as one, even though he played like 2 snaps.
Yeah.
The base defense is what, the depth chart or whatever you want to call it, the actual lineup the Chargers use all the time and should be considered their base defense is the nickel look, and that's again why we went with this today.
All right, so there it is. We like the nickel package, and we like that starting lineup for the Chargers. So that's going to do it for the fan question. Send us your questions, and we'll answer them again in the bonus edition of the Recharge. I'm Ruben Gonzalez, and of course, that was Michael Peterson, and we'll see you guys next week.